Hi everyone, welcome to Tutorial Tuesday. We're going to be doing cables, and we'll just give everybody a minute here to come in. But you should be muted, I think, when you come in. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question. We like to have questions, makes things a little more interesting. So don't hesitate to ask, and also have your chat open. We're going to be posting links to just, the things that we're talking about. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll make sure to get to those. Yeah, we've still got a few more people, looks like, coming in, so we'll give a chance. We love to see faces. If you're comfortable, turn your cameras on. And yeah, we'll get started. Cables, we're going to do cables today. So we'll cover basic cables. So if you have no experience with cables, that's perfect. But even if you're experienced, hopefully we'll have a few tips that might, make your cabling life easier. So, so stick around. And we also have a couple special things, a discount code that we'll show later, and just a couple upcoming things that we're doing. And all right, I think I'll really get started now. It looks like most everyone is in. So hi, I am Suzanne Nielsen. I'm a rep for Zen Yarn Garden and do some pattern designing, and I am really loving teaching these classes and things and doing these knit-alongs with Anik. Anik is also with us. She is also a rep and designer and does the other half of the Tutorial Tuesdays. We've been switching off on these and helping out. So she's manning the chat today, and next week she'll be in my seat showing you seaming. So that will be fun next week too.
If only I was literally in your seat in California.
Yes.
Still kind of cold up here in Canada.
Yes, so I'm in California and she's in Canada, and we still get to make it work. But anyway, so without further ado, I will get into cabling. And like I said, this is just a demo, so really just meant for you to get an idea, and then you can go home and practice on something else later. We have a few samples to show you of things you might want to try. But we're going to switch over to my hands now. So I have just a really basic sample swatch that I made. I've already done one cable that goes to the right and one cable that goes to the left. And I just wrote up this quick little pattern just to show you what it looks like in most patterns. Now, of course, everybody has their different way to chart things. So, so really it's just learning kind of the basic idea, and then you'll look at your chart for more specifics. But in this one, so I've already worked up to all the way up to row 14, through row 14. So I'm about to go into another cable row to show you. But you can see here the chart, usually the symbols that the designer will use will look a little bit like the cable. So you can see in this chart, it looks a little bit like a right-leaning decrease or right-leaning cable, right cross cable. And this one looks a little bit like the stitches are going to the left. So that's what I'm going to show you here. We're going to first do a cable that goes to the right. So, and I am going to show you cabling without a cable needle, which I think, once you see it, it's preferable, just because you don't have to have an extra cable hanging around. But I do have just a little garter stitch border here of 3 stitches, and then I get right into my cable. So this cable is a 3x3 cable. So we have 3 stitches that are gonna go to the front or to the back, and 3 stitches that are gonna come do the opposite. So how do you know which ones come to the front and which ones go to the back? So that is what your chart is telling you. So normally, it might be a little bit more specific. It might say, in this case, you want to move 3 stitches to your cable needle and hold them in the back, and then knit 3 stitches, and then knit the stitches from your cable needle. So that's what I'm going to show here. But the way to do it without a cable needle is that you go and grab those stitches first. And so since, again, I'm just going to take a little bit more of a look here to, I really want you to feel, you know, comfortable knowing which way you're supposed to be doing it. And if we can visually see that we want 3 stitches to go in front, here, actually, I'm going to show you Anik's way. She uses her hands like this. And you have to decide which ones you want to be on top. So if you're doing a right leaning cable, you want the ones, the stitches that are on the left to come over the top of the other stitches. If you're going to do a left leaning cable, then you want the stitches, the first stitches to come in front. So cables are really just switching the order of the way you knit stitches. So in order to do a right leaning, we want these 3 stitches that are on the left to come to the front. So I'm going to take my right needle and bring it to the front and go into those stitches without those in the mix at all. So essentially, without the cable needle, we're just going to switch the position of the stitches. So I stick my needle into these 3 stitches, and then I just kind of pinch somewhere below the stitches. It doesn't have to be right on the stitches. You can just kind of pinch the fabric and let them slip off. I know that seems scary, right? But they're easy to just go and find. So now we found those 3 stitches that we let slip off. You can see this okay. And now those stitches are going to go to the back. These stitches come to the front, and we just put these stitches back on. So we already did all the work of the cable. And now all we need to do is knit across those stitches. So oh, that one slipped off, but we knit the 3 stitches that we moved. These are the ones that would have been held on the cable needle, but we can just knit them because they're already there. All right, and then I'm going to show the other cross, and I will do that one with throwing instead of picking. But also oftentimes with a cable, you'll be either on reverse stockinette. So in the middle here, I'm purling between them, or you'll be on just like a garter stitch. And that really makes your cables pop out. But of course you can do cables just without, you know, it could just all be stockinette also. But anyway, that was kind of a side track. All right, so the next one is, we can look, it's the same cable. So I'm on this one, then the next cable is the same leaning as the first one. So we want it to be a left leaning cable. So we want the stitches that are first to come on top of the stitches that are second. So we want to now take our needle to the back, because we want these stitches to go to the back and these stitches to come to the front. So we go to the back and go in, you can see, go into the back. And then again, I'm just gonna kind of pinch these stitches somewhere below the stitches on this needle with my thumb, let them all slip off, including that one, and then go grab these stitches and put them back on my needle. And now these stitches can get put back on like so. Oops, I split the yarn here. All right, and then you just knit these stitches. So knit. Knit off. And then we get to the first 3 and we knit those stitches. Whoops. And then I have just a little border here. So that is the very basics of cable knitting. Of course, there's a whole lot of variations that you can do with cables. So Oftentimes, if you want the cable to really appear like it's floating on top, you might have a cable where the stitches that are in front are knit, but the stitches that are held to the back are purled. But that's, a pretty simple change. Just purl the stitches that are to the back and knit the ones that have come to the front. Also, there oftentimes you'll have like 3 stitches that get crossed in front and 2 that are held in back, or vice versa. So there's like just so much out there. But I think we'll pause a little bit to see if we have any questions, and then I have a few more like advanced cabling ideas to share.
We did have a question, Suzanne. If you have any tips or tricks on how to avoid the ladders and the loose stitches that sometimes happen along the cable.
So I don't know, let's look at my cables from before. I might have already kind of pulled these, but you can see often, like, look at this stitch right here. It's a little bit loose, and so it looks a little bit longer. But you know what I really do is after you're done a ways up, so I can't really do it on this one yet because I need to knit another row, but on this one, I really just pull. So pull your cables, and that kind of will even out your stitches. If you see a stitch that really looks, too long, you can go to the stitch next to it and pull it up and kind of work yourself back to even things out. But I usually find that just going up to the cable and pulling it helps to even things out. So I don't worry too much about like pulling too hard when I'm actually doing the cable, because I don't. Do you have any other tips off the top of your head?
I do actually.
Go for it.
If the purl right before the cable is what you're worried about, the looseness, you can actually purl that one twisted.
Oh,
yes. Tighten it up right before your cable. So just remember to do it all along the cable and not just where you're crossing your stitches. But that can be one solution to really tighten up the stitch right before and right after cables, especially if it's a floating cable where it's on a reverse stockinette background.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So that can be one option.
That's a good one. All right. But we do have a special discount code, so we can show that too. It's just cables. So that is good for 20% off of the whole website. And yeah, so enjoy that. And then I think we're doing a link to the website too in the chat, so you can get that. You do have to just click on it in the chat. You can't copy and paste it. But if you click on it, it will open a browser in your website or in your computer that takes you to the website. And then we also just wanted to mention we have a new knit along coming up that is the Rainbow Warrior shawl, which is really fun. Show the backside there, but just a really fun, neat, bright shawl. It is like a crescent shape, really long crescent shaped with a picot edge. So that will be fun with a knit along. If you've never done a picot edge before, then we can help guide you through that. It does have a lot of slip stitches in it, but it's got like one kind of crazy color that you can go with. This one is called Sprinkles. And then the other color is just a neutral. So you can kind of go crazy with one color and then tone it down with the other. Anik, are you going to talk about the yarn, or do you want to say that or not this time? This one is, this one is the fingering weight. It's in the super fine fingering. You also have the option of the Serenity 20, but we just posted the dates. It starts on May 2nd. So we're coming up to the deadline to sign up for this one. So you do, come join us. We always have fun in our knit alongs.
We do. Including our current one, which has cables.
Yes. So our current knit along that we're working on is called the Freija. this is the current knit along. I don't know if the lighting is good when I'm here, but it is just this amazing cabled pullover with some bobbles. And it looks much more complicated than it is, but it's really fun to do, like, just quite so many cables. We do have kits for this on the website. And I think our sessions for the knit along are recorded. So you can still get access to those and join us, I guess, for the last two, even if you aren't, you know, as far as long. I'm only up to here right now, but it's really fun because yeah, Anik is getting farther. I'm going to show you some cables in this one too that are just a little bit more, I don't know, advanced, but still super doable. And Anik is going to help us knit from, so the pattern has you knit the body and knit the sleeves separately and then join them together. But Anik has modified the pattern a bit so that we're going to knit the body and then do a provisional cast on for the sleeves so that we can knit the sleeves down and change the fit just a little bit. These sleeves, they're beautiful, but they're a little bit bell shaped, which some of us kind of want to change a little bit. So that's the fun, exciting parts of joining us for knit along, is that we can really customize and help through all the steps. And yeah, just really get to any questions. I think the knit alongs are kind of fun because they give us a chance to chat and then, you know, progress in the knitting and then ask more questions. Plus we also do a Facebook group for each of the knit alongs. So if you have any questions, you know, even after it's over, it's still there to ask questions too. And yeah, so next I'm going to show a little bit more of the cables in the Freija cardigan, actually, because they're just a great example.
Just before we do that, however, I'm just going to quickly mention the code word cables is good for 48 hours.
Oh, yes.
So, and it's good for all the knit alongs, all the kits, the grab bags. We love grab bags.
Oh, yes, grab bags, grab bags.
So it does apply to everything on the Zen Yarn Garden Zen Yarn Garden website. I can totally say that 5 times fast.
We got to practice.
We do.
All right, so yeah, back to cables, cabling. I just wanted to show this really good example that it's, let me hold it up a little bit more.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Very complicated, right? But it's surprisingly not, because let me grab the pattern here. This is kind of just a little snippet of the pattern. But what happens along the front is that you have cables that maybe it's easier to show on the work here. You have cables that split. So in one row you have a cable that goes this way, so every other one. But then when you're in the next row, your cable is always crossing one direction. So you have like an entire row where you're just crossing one direction, and then you have another row that they split, and then the next row they all cross in the same direction. So oftentimes cabling can just look much more complicated than it really is, which I think is why knitters like cables, maybe. But the only difference in this one is that you have a cable that is like a 3x2 cable, where you have 3 stitches that will go over the top, 3 stitches that are stockinette, and then 2 stitches that are purled. So you would do your switching the same way. You would decide which way to get your yarn, and you would cross the 3 stitches on top and the purl stitches on the bottom if you're doing a left leaning one, or you would have 3 stitches from this side that would come to the top, and those would be knit, and then these 2 would be purled. So that's like a little bit more of an advanced cable. One of my favorite things is reversible cables, because if you look at this cable, it's great for sweaters because it looks great on the front, but on the back, bleh, it's not really, you know, much to look at. But reversible cables, they're really easy to do. They're the same, except that you're ribbing. So you have knit, purl, knit, purl. You might have a 4x4 cross cable, but it's in ribbing. So you'd have 4 stitches that would come on top, 4 stitches in the back. You would knit this one, purl, and then knit, purl, and then go on whatever the pattern has. But that's a really fun way to have it look good on both sides. So if you're doing, a blanket or a scarf or something, having those reversible cables is really fun, but there's no like big trick to them. The only trick to them is that it's ribbing. And because it's ribbing, that it pulls it in. So you don't even see those purl stitches really, you only see the knit stitches that have crossed. It does make it really, thick. So yeah, that's the trick. Any other questions? There's also just, if you have a 1x1 cable, it's really just called a twisted stitches, sometimes people will say. Really just a cable that's, just 2 stitches. And if you only have 2 stitches, there's actually a way to knit them without even arranging them first. You just like go and knit the second stitch first and then knit the first stitch while they're on the needles, and then you take them both off together. But maybe we'll do another tutorial on that later. So
varying cables.
Yes, we can do advanced cables. Maybe we'll actually show some reversible ones and those little twisted stitches. And yeah, so any questions or any other questions that people want to ask? We have a few more minutes. But basically, just remember with cabling, you're just rearranging the stitches. And I would say like up to a 4x4 cable, I would do it this way. If I had something massive, bigger, then I would maybe get out my cable needle or an extra double pointed needle or anything really, just to hold the stitches to the back or to the front.
Little 9-inch needles are great.
That's a good one to use too. Or even like, anything. It doesn't have to be the same size. It doesn't, your cable needle can be like just a small something. But sometimes if it's that big too, sometimes it's okay to let your stitches hang out for a little while. Oh, that was the other thing. I think we'll cover this in the like really advanced cable class, but it is possible to fix a miscrossed cable. So
we'll be covering that in the Freija knit along if you want to join us.
Yes. All right. Perfect. Good. So yeah, maybe we'll cover that in another tutorial Tuesday, and it's definitely in the Freija one, because you don't want to take out everything, but it is possible to just drop like some of the half of the stitches and then oh yeah, I see. Maureen says she uses a toothpick. That's perfect.
Yep, been there, done that.
What you gotta do, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, let's see another. Oh, you want to see it with a third needle? Yes, I can do that for sure. That's a good idea. If I have a third needle, I will find one. Let me take out. I'm gonna take out the cable I just did, so that we can use that.
While you do that, I will show the cables discount. Woohoo!
Yeah, so I'm just taking out the last cable that I did. And re-grabbing these stitches. All right, so with a cable needle, let me find, okay. Just for the sake of time, I happen to have a paper clip here at my desk. So I'm gonna use a paper clip as my cable needle holder. All right, so when you're using a cable needle, your pattern will tell you to slip these first stitches to a cable needle. And then it will say, depending on which cross you're doing, either hold those stitches to the front or hold those stitches to the back. So in this case, we are doing a, let's look at our hands here. We're doing a left cross cable. That's what it looks like here in the pattern. And that's what this one looks like. These stitches came to the top. So left cross. So we're going to hold the stitches on the cable needle to the front. So hold those to the front. And then you just go ahead and knit your next stitches. So knit 3. And then you can either knit, if you had a cable needle, then you could just lift this up here and knit from the cable needle. But since I just used this random paper clip, I will put these stitches back on the actual needle here. All right, back on the needle and then knit those stitches. Oops. So if you've got a bigger cable, or if you're not comfortable with just doing the switch first, then you can use that technique where you put the stitches on the needle and then either knit from them if you've got a real cable needle, or put the stitches from the cable needle back on the needle if you're just using whatever is lying around. All right. Anything else before? We've got a few more minutes. And yeah, if you guys have ideas for little techniques that you want to see, don't hesitate to reach out and tell us what other tutorials you want, because yeah, we have fun doing these, and we want to show you things you want.
And remember to sign up for next week's, which is seaming.
Yes, seaming. Anika's going to show us.
Which is an indispensable tool.
Yes, that most of us don't like, right?
And yet it's so easy when you know how. So come and learn how.
Yes, easy, and it can make your knits look so much better, right? If you do it right.
It does. It makes a garment look so professional.
Yeah. Oh, I see a question from Maggie. No, you don't have to use the same size needle if you're going to knit off the cable. So you don't have to use the same size needle, because your stitches are formed mostly when you're making the stitch. So it does help maybe to have it roughly the same. One, because if it's not, then it will slip out really easily, depending on, you know, this whatever I was using, this paper clip, if it weren't bent, it could have slipped out really easily, and then you're back to square one, I guess.
If you do purchase cable needles from your local yarn shop or wherever, they usually oftentimes come in packs of 3.
Yeah,
with a very small,
sometimes they have like
large
grooves on them. Sometimes they're like a little squiggly just to hold those stitches in. And so, but you would never want to use a cable that was bigger than your stitches. Yeah. So yeah, so I wouldn't use a cable that was like made for bulky yarn with a fingering weight, because that would stretch out your stitches. It would be hard to get in there anyway. But really you can use one that's smaller for sure. So a double pointed needle works well. And the other ones that we've mentioned before too. But yeah, I just wouldn't really go too much bigger than your yarn. And you, I lost my other train of thought there. Oh, but you're not going to stretch out the cables too much. I mean, so as you're knitting off of them, just don't stretch them a lot if your needle is much smaller. That makes sense.
And what about when you're coming back on the wrong side? How would you knit those?
Yeah, let's do it. How about we'll do one more little row. So if you're coming back, like the row after my cable row, there's really no difference. So here we're in a where we're knitting on the wrong side, then we're going to purl across the cables. So you can see this one, it is a little bit, you know, it looks a little bit different, but it's just a normal purl stitch.
So you're basically knitting the knits and purling the purls.
Yep.
Awesome.
Knit the knits, purl the purls. if you, but I mean, there's some patterns, of course, that it could be different, but in general, that's what you do. Knit the knits, purl the pearls. So I knit the knits. Now I'm going to purl these pearls. They do look a little funky, right? They're not quite spaced as normal, but after this row, then they will be. So, and then I have a border stitch that's just garter, so I'll need to knit those. And that is the back side. And now they're a little bit more evenly spaced, my stitches. But as you go on, they will get better and better. So that's it. Well, here's one other tip, because oftentimes you don't know when you are going to, when you need to cable again. Like, I think to myself, well, am I supposed to cable on this row, or how many more rows do I need? And I lost track of where I was in my pattern. So in that case, it's easy to see where the cable is. So what you want to do is, you can see like a big hole here, or here, let me look at this one. You can kind of see the hole. So you can tell, you can see this stitch right here, it doesn't have any yarn leading into the next stitch, but this one does. So you can see this stitch is the one where is the row that I was doing the cable on, because this one has a stitch and then it leads into the next stitch. So this is the row where things got crossed, and this is the,
in a good way.
What?
Crossed in a good way.
In a good way, yes. Yes, so remember how I did them, I rearranged them beforehand. So this is really like the row before your cable in your pattern. So the row that where you see like, okay, this stitch that's right here is coming towards the next one. This stitch is the one that is the cable row. So then you can count up from that. So I have like, this is row 9 right here. This one would be row 9. And then this would be row 10, 11, 12, 13. And then I would get up to here and I would see this row is row 14, the one before the cable row where things start to go crazy, because it's like headed back over there. All right, does that make sense? So that's a good way of, being able to count where you are, and figure out, when you should start another cable. Because if you, like, I don't know if you remember what it looked like before I did this cable, but it looked, it kind of looks like a little bit of a long ways. And you might have thought, oh my gosh, I should have done the cable earlier. But remember, the cable kind of like uses up some knitting in a way. So you do want to make sure that you have enough rows between cables, otherwise they'll look like super tight. And the wider your cables are, the more room you need between cables in general. But
your pattern will tell you.
Your pattern will tell you. Yeah, this is more like if you're like constructing your own cables or something, but but it's good to be able to read your work to find out what row you're on, so that you can do it. All right, any other questions before we sign off? Oh, welcome, first time for Tutorial Tuesday. So yeah, keep coming. We keep doing these Tutorial Tuesdays, and I don't know, we might take a little break for a while, we'll see, but then we'll come back and let us know what you like. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and leave comments and post, pictures and stuff. We love to see it. So.
And don't forget, if there is a technique that you want to see, send us a little message and we'll try to get a Tutorial Tuesday up for it. Because if you have a question, chances are somebody else does too.
Yes.
So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Don't forget to use cables at checkout for 20% off 48 hours.